Cold War, Stanislav Petrov. One man looked at a screen that said nuclear attack. He had minutes to decide whether to end the world. He decided not to press the button. This isn't a movie. This actually happened, and almost nobody had heard of it for years because the country that caused it kept it a secret. It was September 26, 1983. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union had been going on for decades. Both sides pointing thousands of nuclear weapons at each other, both sides terrified the other would strike first. To make sure they've never changed, be caught off guard, the Soviet Union built a brand new early warning system. Satellites in space, watching the United States around the clock, looking for the flash of a missile launch. If American missiles ever took off, the Soviets wanted to know instantly so they could fire back before their own weapons were destroyed. Here's why the timing made everything worse. Just 3 weeks earlier, Soviet forces had shot down a Korean passenger plane that strayed into their airspace, killing everyone on board, including an American congressman. Relations between the two superpowers hadn't been this tense in years. Both sides were on edge, and both sides were watching each other for any sign of a first strike. That night, one man was in charge of watching those satellites. His name was Stanislav Petrov, a lieutenant colonel in Soviet Air Defense Forces. It was supposed to be a quiet shift. Then the alarms went off. The screen in front of him flashed one word, in giant red letters: launch. The system was reporting that the United States had just fired a missile at the Soviet Union. Petrov's job in the exact moment was simple: confirm the launch, then report it up the chain of command, all the way to the Soviet leadership. And Soviet military doctrine at the time was clear about what would happen next: a nuclear counterattack. Here's the part that makes this story insane. Petrov had only minutes to decide, somewhere around 15 minutes before an American missile would actually hit Soviet soil. Not enough time to double check with anyone above him. Not enough time to call a meeting, just him, a screen, and a decision that could end millions of lives. At first, it was just one missile. Then, seconds later, the system reported a second missile, then a third, a fourth, a fifth. 5 missiles, according to the computer, all heading towards the Soviet Union, and the system rated its confidence at the highest possible level. Every alarm in the room was screaming at Petrov to report an attack, but something felt wrong to him, and here's the detail that actually saved the world. He thought about number 5. If the United States were really launching a full nuclear first strike, Petrov reasoned, they wouldn't send just 5 missiles. A real attack meant to wipe out the Soviet Union's ability to strike back would need hundreds of missiles launched all at once, not a handful trickling in one by one. 5 missiles didn't make sense, not for the end of the world. There was also no confirmation from ground radar stations, which normally would have picked up incoming missiles too. Just this one satellite system screaming an alert that nothing else agreed with. So Petrov made a call that wasn't really his to make. He told his commanders it was a false alarm. Not probably, not maybe, a false alarm. If he was wrong, the Soviet Union would take a nuclear hit without firing back. If he was right, he'd just quietly prevented a war nobody would ever know about. Then everyone in the bunker waited. If missiles were really coming, they'd know for certain within minutes. The minutes passed, no explosions, no missiles, nothing. Petrov was right. It had all been a mistake, and here's the twist behind the mistake. It wasn't a computer glitch or a broken wire. The satellites had picked up sunlight reflecting off clouds high above the United States, and the system's software mistook the glare for the flash of missile launches. A trick of a light, read by a machine that had never been fully tested against exactly this kind of error. You'd think Petrov would have been called a hero. Instead, the Soviet military quietly investigated the failure, criticized him for not filling out his paperwork properly during the incident, and moved on. The whole event was buried as a state secret. Petrov didn't get a medal, he barely got a mention. It only became public more than a decade later, after the Soviet Union had already collapsed. By the time the world found out, journalists started calling him the man who saved the world. Petrov never liked the title. He always said he was just doing his job, and that anyone else in that chair might have made the same call, maybe. But not everyone would have trusted their own doubt over a machine screaming certainty. So, why does this story matter now? Because it wasn't a general who stopped a nuclear war, it wasn't a president or a treaty or some genius piece of technology. It was one tired man in an underground bunker trusting his own judgment over a screaming red alarm. In the span of about 4 minutes. 4 minutes is barely enough time to make a sandwich. It was enough time to decide the fate of the entire planet. And that's how one man's gut feeling, made in the dark, alone, under an alarm demanding the opposite, quietly kept the Cold War from turning into the last war humanity ever fought.